Give me just a second while Facebook starts. All right, we're ready to go.
Okay. So Mr. Pease is not with us this evening, so I'll be performing the duty of the chairperson at 7:04 p.m. I'll call the October 7th meeting of Planning and Zoning to order. We have two items on the agenda. The first item, discuss, consider, and act upon a request to approve a site plan for the property located at or about 400 South Paschall Road, southeast corner of US Highway 80 and South Paschall Road. Mr. I guess Zachary, you want to tell
Yes,
us
sir.
a little more about this?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a site plan proposal for a one-story office park to be located at or about 400 South Paschall Road off of US Highway 80. This is zoned highway commercial and will be anchored by the Tulo State Farm Agency. This sits on a 5.4 acre lot, but only 1.5 acres are proposed for development. This plan meets all requirements of the UDO and staff recommends approval. I'd also like to note that public notice letters were sent out within a 200-foot buffer. No letters in protest were received. Mr. Chairman, I turn it over to you and thank you.
Okay. All right. And again, this is for approval of a site plan. We believe we had the preliminary plan before us earlier in our last meeting. So I assume, Mr. Saucer, you're here to speak on your behalf?
Certainly. I can talk about the project and answer any questions. Yes, you did see a couple of weeks ago or whenever that was, the plat was going through at the same time the site plan is. The Tullus State Farm Agency is currently in Sunnyvale. If you notice them behind Tino's in that little strip shopping center. And Mr. Tullus has purchased the land there that we're looking at. And out of that 7,000 square foot building, he is going to take about 2,500 of that and relocate his agency there. So 5,000 square feet will be for rent as of this moment. This is a one-story building. If you've seen the 7 other buildings that I've developed in Sunnyvale, you probably know that we have very high standard of aesthetics and we want to do high quality projects. This project will be no different. It will have stone, brick, some metal roof, some composition shingle roof, accents of maybe various stuccos and other wood look tiles, I guess is the best way to describe it. So it'll be a very interesting facade. I don't know if in your packet, Zach, were you able to put in any of the possible elevations that we're looking at?
I can pull that up real quick. Give me just a second.
For the name, Mr. Saucer, please state your name and address.
Derek Salser, 345 New Hope Road, Sunnyvale, Texas.
Okay, thank you.
And that doesn't have any color or, oh, there you go. That's the Inspiration building that's that's built in actually Midlothian. But that just gives you kind of the flavor of what you're going to see over there on the Paschall property. So I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Okay, anyone with any council persons having any questions they'd like to ask of Mr. Saucer?
You said there were going to be it would be rental property?
It's an office building with lease space for rent, owner occupied 1/3 of it. So yes, there is there is office space for rent, much like our building next to Town Hall.
Okay. Thank you.
I have one question, Mr. Salter, and I believe I kind of alluded to this at the last meeting, but I'm very familiar with this property. It backs up to my home, and it's heavily wooded and just really, really nice. I think this is a good fit. Are you going to have any type of little patio area or anything like that developed under those trees and everything, which the tenants could, I don't know, have good lunch areas and so forth like that, or just a good place to walk and have coffee breaks and whatever? Have you thought about that?
Yes, but nothing is formally in the site plan for such an area. But it won't surprise me if the tenants in this building don't go exploring down there and make their own picnic areas in the woods.
Yeah, I think that would be a good area for that. Okay, thank you.
All right, if no other questions, we will open this up to the public so the public can comment or be heard. So anyone wishing to be heard, please hold up your hand or indicate by message in the message bar. Zachary, do we have anybody wishing to be heard?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman. I see no hands raised.
No one from the public? All right, if we have no one wishing to be heard, we'll close the public portion of this meeting. And just for the record, Miss Burton, Mr. Moss, Mr. Golder, and Mr. Sandler are present along with myself.
Good evening.
So council members, committee members, anybody has anything to discuss? Or any more questions of Mr. Saucer? As Mr. Moss said, I think it's pretty straightforward. We've looked at this property before and seen his proposal. So if there's no other discussion or questions, I would take a motion.
I move that we approve the site plan for property located on at or about 400 South Paschall Road at the southwest corner of US Highway 80 and South Paschall Road.
Okay.
I'll second that. I'll second that.
Okay. Motion approved by Ms. Burton, seconded by Mr. Golder. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I see all five, unanimous, 5-0 for approval. All right, thank you, Mr. Saucer. All right, and the second and last item on the agenda, discuss and act upon a request to approve a site plan with a variance for a large pylon sign for a Whataburger located at or about US Highway 80 and South Collins Road. That's in Sunnyvale Center, right behind the QT. Zachary, please, Mr. Mance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a site plan proposal to construct a 3,697 square foot Whataburger quick service restaurant off of US Highway 80, adjacent to the Quick Trip as part of the Sunnyvale Center MPD. Staff notes that this proposal meets all requirements of the UDO. However, it should be noted that the landscape requirements for the project are set forth within the Sunnyvale Center MPD. The landscape plan meets the requirements with the exception of the proposed pylon sign, which exceeds the maximum size and height restrictions. Council can approve the larger signs as part of the site approval process. The applicant is also proposing to remove a sidewalk along the access drive that connects the inner loop road to Highway 80. The sidewalk was required by council with the approval of the Quick Trip site plan. The applicant wants to replace it with landscape areas, and its removal will require council approval. This site plan meets all ordinance requirements and staff recommends approval. I'd also like to note that public notice letters were sent out within a 200-foot buffer. No protests were received, and one letter in favor was submitted from the owner of an adjacent land tract. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, would you repeat that again? We had responses from how many?
We had one response in favor.
Oh, one response in favor. Okay, all right. All right, is there's, I guess, Mr. No. Someone wishing to speak on behalf of the applicant. Please step forward.
I'm Randall Kirk with Whataburger, representing Whataburger.
Okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Randall Kirk. Address is 3200 Town East Boulevard, Mesquite, Texas.
Okay. And anything you wish to discuss or elaborate on this proposal?
I'd just like to say that we worked really hard the last year or so with your staff there and with the developer to come up with this plan, and we are ready to proceed with it.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Kirk from the committee?
Why are you removing the sidewalk? If I understood, it just said that the town staff or the town council had required the sidewalk and now we're removing it?
We're not really sure what the purpose of the sidewalk is, or we're going to have a bus lane down there for access to it or what. And it would allow us to add more landscape and a little bit more beauty to the area.
Okay.
Does the sidewalk run parallel to the frontage road?
It runs parallel to the entry into Quick Trip.
Oh, okay. Does it make it an easy egress and everything from Whataburger to Quick Trip? Is that?
It helps with that, but also it just doesn't seem to have a purpose.
Do we know what the purpose of it was originally when the town required it or when QT built it?
So this is Charles Goff. I don't know the answer to that question. Just to add some context here, a sidewalk isn't a requirement of the MPD ordinance in this area. It was a request from the council to be added to the site plan, but it doesn't. There's no sidewalks on Highway 80, so it doesn't connect to any pedestrian ways out there, and it doesn't really connect any pedestrian ways, into Quick Trip or anything. So it's kind of a sidewalk to nowhere, if you will. So. It's not a requirement of the ordinance, but it would take, council approval for it to be removed. So Whataburger saying they'd prefer to have some extra landscaping there than the sidewalk, but that's for you to make a recommendation on to council, and council ultimately to make a decision about whether or not it stays or goes.
Okay, so basically it serves no function or purpose.
Let me ask this: when customers going into QT that want to go over to Whataburger and get something to go, wouldn't it make it easy for them to get back and forth, or vice versa?
No, the sidewalk is going from Highway 80 up to the QT, and why he didn't do it on their property instead of additional property is kind of a surprise.
Okay.
Do you think the town was originally planning to have, once the whole area is developed, the sidewalks to all connect or something?
Again,
I have no idea what the answer would be to that.
Yeah, I don't know. I would assume that if the intent of the town was to have sidewalks throughout the development, that would have been included, in the standard requirements for the plan development district, but it does not speak to any sidewalks. So it's not a requirement. It was just something that council requested when the QT site plan went before council.
Okay.
But staff recommends approval of doing away with the sidewalk. Is that correct?
So staff's recommendation is based on the requirements of the MPD. So we base our review and our recommendation based on what is, what are the standards that are written in the zoning ordinance. So again, that's the basis of our recommendation. Again, looking at it as far as it doesn't really connect to any other sidewalks. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense out, and as a larger picture of, connecting pedestrian areas or anything like that. So, we felt like we couldn't recommend to keep or add something that wasn't in the standards of the MPD. But again, acknowledging that that's ultimately council's decision as to whether or not it stays or goes, because they requested that it be added.
Okay, thank you.
Is this sidewalk connected to the road, or? Because I'm looking at a Google Earth view and I can't find a sidewalk anywhere unless it's running along the edge of the road or the access road coming into QT. So I'm not sure
It
what
is.
purpose.
It is running the access road to QT.
Right. It's on the west side, I believe, of the access road to QT.
The west side of the access road. So it's on the QT side, basically. Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So. All right. Any further questions?
I was wondering if we had any pictures or drawings or renderings of what that sign might look like, the 40-foot pylon sign.
We did turn those into the planning and zoning. We've already submitted all those.
I don't have that copy of that. Is there a way to put that up on the screen?
No, it's not anything that I have to put up on the screen at this time.
Yeah, I don't know that we have that. I haven't seen that.
But we had worked with the P&Z on the committee on the base of it, the height, and the actual sign. So we have worked with the city on dealing with this.
Okay.
What is your concern or question on that?
I was just curious what it was going to look like. Often when there's something like that, we'll have a picture or a diagram or some sort of a rendering of it that we can kind of get an idea what it's going to look like.
Okay, well, I don't know how familiar you are with Whataburger, but it would be the flying W at the top of it.
Okay.
The dimension and the kind of the scale of the sign would be very similar to what was approved for QT. They had to seek a similar variance from the council, and that was approved. So this mimics that as far as, the overall scale and size.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? If not, let's open this up to the public. If anyone out there in the public wishes to be heard, please raise your hand, text, or please get Mr. Mantz's attention and we will pull you in.
No hands raised.
No hands raised. Okay. Hearing that no hands are raised, no one wishing to speak, we'll close the public portion of this agenda item and go back to committee discussion. Any other questions or discussion? It's a straightforward site plan, but with the exception for the sign. And from what I understand, I guess regardless of whether we were to approve or disapprove a sign, it will go to council for approval.
So in the motion that's made, if you could address the two requests for waivers. So either with or without the pylon sign and with or without the sidewalk, that would be helpful for keeping our record.
Okay. And, okay, Mr. Sadler, you had a,
Yes, thank you. The signage for the Whataburger, did I hear that correctly, that it's going to be as large as the QT signage?
Yes, roughly, yes.
Okay, and that's consistent with the PD as it's laid out, correct?
No, that's larger than what's allowed typically for the PD, but the PD lays out a process by which they can ask for a larger sign, and that's ultimately approved by council. And so that's what they're doing. I think the thought process was for QT, and I think Whataburger feels the same way of, given the adjacency to the highway, given the larger setback along the highway, trying to catch the eyes of people, traveling on the highway to get them to exit to come to here. They felt a larger sign was warranted.
And what does the PD call for in terms of what's allowed without a variance?
So the standard requirements are for a 10-foot tall sign that is a maximum of 65 square feet.
And that's what's referenced in the packet.
Yes.
And what is their request?
For a 40-foot tall sign with an area not to exceed 157 square feet.
Okay.
pretty much equivalent to what QT already has, correct?
Well, I travel that route often and live in that area. And I could see the wanting a sign that's up tall because the exit to Collins is, you gotta, it's far up. And the exit is quite a ways from where Whataburger is going to be and where QT is. But if you see the sign, your 10-foot sign, which wouldn't do, I think. So sounds like a good idea to me.
And so the only thing I would note, and I guess this may be a question from Ms. McDonald, is to the extent that we allow this variance, I mean, I guess that kind of sets a precedent for other folks coming in who want the same type of treatment. We don't really know the different types of folks that will come in terms of how many more and what that PD will facilitate in terms of numbers of occupants, right? And so I guess there is a slight concern with, if we have a bunch of new occupants, will they all want that same type of treatment, and what's a precedent for that? Please no barking, just English. English response.
Brenda, did you want to address that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure.
I was talking to the dog.
No problem. So it's
the precedent question, right?
Right. We don't know how many people are coming on to ultimately when Sunnyvale Center will be fully built out. And so the question, just trying to think forward thinking, would be, what if you have 5 other occupants, for example, would want a 40-foot sign as well? How do we deal with that?
Well, these sort of corner properties are at the lowest elevation compared to the main roadway. And so generally when you're talking about variances, they're based on the need for visibility. And I can see where in this particular location, it's warranted. Whereas if you looked at other locations that are not at the bottom of sort of the hill, then it might not be warranted. And I think this is something that you look at on a case-by-case basis. When you're going to vary the provisions in the town's ordinances, you should look at the reason for the request.
This is Mark Priestner. I want to add one thing to that. A variance, just to add on to what Brenda is saying, a variance by itself does not set a precedent. So the zoning case and the categories that are laid out in the PD are the things that set the precedent. The ability to get the variance through the council does not set a precedent. So therefore, it is on a case by case. Just because you approve one does not automatically guarantee the next person the same thing. So it is very much a case by case.
Okay. All right. Any further questions concerning the requests, the variances, any other discussion items? All right. If no other discussion, no other questions, I'll ask for a motion. And again, as Ms. McDonald stated, please make sure and specify the sidewalk and the pylon sign in the motion.
Not all at once.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend that we approve the site plan, the sidewalk deletion, and the variance for this for the pylon sign that is being requested for Whataburger located on US Highway 80 and south of Collins Road in Sunnyvale Center.
Okay, I have a motion to approve
I'll second it again.
with sidewalk deletion and sign variance approval. Motion by Mr. Moss, seconded by Mr. Golder. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, we have 4 in favor and 1 opposed. So motion carries. Any other issues or questions? If not, I will ask.
I appreciate y'all helping with this, and I apologize for the extra noise that I added to the meeting here.
No problem. You have the, you have the, is yours, you're the Whataburger in downtown Mesquite behind the Baptist church, right?
Yes.
Or that, okay, okay. And that looks like a pretty, it's been there quite a while. It's the old original steel roof with the big W, right? Yeah.
Well, it was original steel till about 2 weeks ago, and then we had to change it because it did weather over the 40 years or 50 years it's been. So,
you're going to maintain that location?
Yeah, I remember taking my wife and kids there back in the 70s. So that's how long it's been there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. We're looking forward to being in Sunnyvale and out there on the highway with y'all.
All right.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you,
I'd
Mr.
like to make an additional motion
Okay.
to adjourn.
To adjourn. Mr. Sandler, motion to adjourn the meeting. He's made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Moss. All those in favor of adjourning, raise your hand. Looks like it's motion 5-0 to adjourn the meeting at 7:32 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Y'all have a good
Bye-bye.
evening.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.